Welcome to She Blaze, where we're bringing you cannabis culture from a woman's point of view. And as always, here to elevate the cannabis industry. I'm one of your hosts, Ice Dawson, cannabis socialite.
And I am Deshita Dawson, the weed head.
Hi, sis. Hey, sis.
On today's episode of She Blaze, did the Trump administration really just reschedule cannabis? Honey, we got questions. And you already know your girls are going to give it a deep dive. So let's get into this episode.
Hey, sis.
Hey.
Hey, we've had a very, 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 very busy week. Okay. Rescheduling conversation hinted the chat. And the chat is blowing up right now with a lot of crazy stuff and a lot of interesting stuff. And I'm ready to talk about it. But first, let's get into our high of the week. You know, we got to at least give something to the people that they can get excited about. My high of the week is Equity is Not a Program, which is the shirt that I have on. Shout out to this group that is reminding everybody that the work that we're doing for equity-centered policy is not about a licensing programming, y'all. Yes, equity is important, but equity is not about who gets the license. It's about who survives the market. It's about who gets to benefit from the cannabis tax revenue from the market. It is a much bigger thing conceptually. It's about resources in general from the government, ensuring that there is equitable allocation and use of those. And we know in America that has not been the case. So equity is not a program. We can't solve hundreds of years of inequitable resource allocation, policing, and the like with a licensing program. Okay. You can go to equityisnotaprogram.com to pick up one of these cool sweatshirts, support the mission. And of course, make sure people know that you're doing a little bit more than just a licensing program.
I know, period. And that can go for all industries across the border as DEI is being challenged. Listen, we never really necessarily asked for y'all DEI. We just asked for y'all to stop burning our shit down, stop, taking away things that we create that's really cool in our culture and snatch it up as yours, because that's what y'all do. And so I definitely agree. Equity is not a program. It is just a lifestyle. Okay. Don't want none, won't be none. And that's really what the act should have said. But my high of the week is a THC product, of course, which is the Caminos Recover. Shout out to Deshita for always making me feel like I need a cannabis edible. Now, this freshly squeezed, when I first was looking at it and even seen it many times, I always thought it was the citrus flavor, but freshly squeezed is orange juice, darling. It just doesn't tell you that it's the orange flavor. That's why it's orange. And it is 5 milligram THC, which I think is perfect for someone who likes to take edibles as during the day regularly. But feels like sometimes the edibles are too high of a dosage for all day, evening, like work kind of affair. So you get you some 5 milligrams. What I also love about it is it has 10 milligrams of CBG, which is the feel good cannabinoid. Deshita, who is into all that, definitely has talked about it many times. And I like these cannabinoids, and it's good. It's delicious. It could be on any coast, as long as you have an adult use state. For the most part, Camino is there. So that's my high of the week. And yeah, so that's my high week, girl.
I love that. I mean, first of all, shout out to Deshita for also recommending it but one of the things about CBG, it can transform into any of the cannabinoids. So part of it being feel good is usually the way our systems are working. It will help us balance out there on our mood. And we need, especially New Yorkers, we need our mood to be lightened a bit, right? And that's why everybody calls it the feel good, but it helps with focus as well. It's really used in a lot of different ways because it can literally transform into different cannabinoids. They call it the mother cannabinoid for that reason.
Okay, well, we're gonna make sure we clip that because the people on the Instagrams and TikToks need to know about this.
Yes.
But while we're clipping it, we also want to remind the people that are watching us, feel free to like the video, share the video too. We also would like you guys to subscribe to our YouTube at the We Head Company, and make sure you're following us on our Instagram as she_Blaze. Okay, and we are going to collect all the timestamps from this very important deep dive and add them to the description, as well as some links that we have throughout the episode. So let's get into the madness, sis, because like you said, the group chat is on fire from rescheduling.
Yes. Okay. I appreciate you in organizing this because it's like, where do we start?
Right, exactly. Well, with all this that's been fueled, I'm literally confused. So let's start there. Ice is confused face. And we want to just remind y'all that we did put out an episode during season 7, episode 2, where we knew this was coming in down the pipeline, and they actually released a congressional research report to help it for some people that are still confused what rescheduling does and what it doesn't do. But let's break it down a little bit plain and simple for the people. What is rescheduling not changing?
Okay, so first of all, there is a lot of people confused. I'm not confused, but there's people confused. Even on my dang on Instagram, people is confused. Shout out to the crazy comments, okay? But no, yeah. So I very clear. You know, I always have little mic drop moments, and I said this maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, when the Biden administration started the whole process of this rescheduling conversation with the Health and Human Services agency at the federal level, making that recommendation to the DEA. I started raising the red flags because I said very clearly, listen, rescheduling is just rebranded criminalization. Okay. It's really critical for us to know, you know, that Spider-Man meme, we've been sharing that amongst our folks in the Marijuana Justice Coalition, because it's like, is it you? Is it you? Is it you? It's the same thing. It's the same thing. What hasn't changed? It still would be federally illegal. Nobody gets out of jail. And there are some additional things that we, you know, have to talk about in the way they wrote this particular order. But generally speaking, going from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 does not change anything. It is the same pig with a new wig. Okay. Criminalization.
A new wig, though.
That's the problem. America loves a new wig, right? You know, let's be honest. The war on drugs was just slavery with a new wig. Okay, we could go on and on and on. America loves a new wig. We love to rename something and reclaim it as something different, but this is still the same thing. Now, what can we celebrate as progress is that we finally have the federal government admitting that there is a medicinal use from cannabis. This is something that we've long wanted to admit, because if something is Schedule 1, it means of no medicinal value. Of no medicinal value. That's really important for you to know. And meanwhile, cannabis, the cannabinoids, not even that, just the terpenes alone, even let's take away the cannabinoids, terpenes and flavonoids have medicinal value. The cannabis plant is a pharmacy. So we know that to be a lie. They've known it since 1998, when the government took a patent out on the medicinal value of cannabinoids particularly. So the fact that we have this rescheduling, they're finally saying, yup, Schedule 3 means it has medicinal value. But let's talk about what they did so that we could all be confused even more and be fighting on social media about whether or not we really rescheduled or not, right? Because they're trying to say some cannabis is different and don't have medicinal value, even though it's the same cannabis.
This is what happens when people that make laws don't actually like ask scientists and people who study and research. I mean, you might come up missing, but they still should probably ask you before implementing anything into the law.
Fair. and they don't. And when they do, because again, Nixon asked a group of doctors about the issues around THC. This is the Schaefer report. There's also the LaGuardia report. All come out around the same time that the creation of the Controlled Substances Act happened in 1970. And what did they find? That he didn't need to do this Controlled Substances Act, but he still did. So this is what I'm talking about: a new pig with a different wig. Right, he had a different goal and than what they were doing, telling him. Their goal was to say, was this going to be harmful to the public? And resoundingly they said, no, it's not.
Okay, and does this now mean it's federally legal for all 50 states too?
No.
So sorry to Idaho, y'all can't smoke weed no more or ever.
If you was, good luck there. But basically what doesn't change is that their federal illegality is just maybe there's a difference. There's some components of cannabis operators, not the plant, but the operators, depending on what you're labeled as, you may be legal or be able to take advantage of being federally legal, federally recognized, I'd like to say. But generally speaking, what we know weed to be is still Schedule 1.
True. So if Curaleaf packs fall off the truck in Idaho, it may be federally legal.
That's still not the case. It depends on whether that packs came off the truck, that it came maybe from a medical program versus an adult use program. But the truth is, because Utah has no program, they can still enforce the law the way they've been enforcing it, because the federal rescheduling is only for places that have a medical program. It is very complicated, but not so. The government wants it to be complicated. This is still one plant, one thing, and they're trying to make it several different things. And by doing this ruling, which let's get into the details, it just really starts breaking down in different ways the industry into these silos. But once again, we still talking about the same bud.
Okay, well, yes, clip that. Let's move into the fine print, because I wear glasses, so I really got to make it big. Let's talk about the money, because really this is kind of what it feels like it boils down to, because you could have just took it off, right? Like, alcohol is not on Schedule 1, Schedule 2, Schedule 3. So, and not saying that cannabis is alcohol, but even Advil, that doesn't seem like it's on Schedule 1, Schedule 2, and Schedule 3.
Yeah, so there is a point of all this. This is why we said deschedule or do nothing. I don't know if y'all recall, I might have been season 6 that I was saying that, but the Cannabis Regulators of Color Coalition has been saying from the beginning that we will continue to advocate for descheduling, because at the end of the day, until people are free, the plant still isn't free. Like, right, we are not free to use it as we'd like to, because we should. That is a human right. And also there are people who are still in jail for its possession, and that is also a problem. So this didn't fix any of it, and we knew it wasn't. In fact, all it did was really give a blank check to a lot of big companies, some in cannabis, some out of cannabis, and we should be clear on how that's going to impact the overall market.
Oh, so it fixed it for them. So who exactly is it fixing it for? And when the DOJ guys signed the rescheduling bill, did we see any of the CEOs or lobbyists of the big cannabis companies in the room? Because we know they like to take pictures.
Well, first of all, Trump do not like anybody else but himself in the administration acting like they a rock star. So he signed his order with nobody really behind him other than an aide passing the pen and the paper from the picture I saw. But again, Trump administration tends to also doctor things. So that could have just been an AI. Yeah, we don't know. But that being said, what I will say is this clearly was negotiated by really large multi-state operators. They're the ones who have had the money from the beginning. They have been at the, Trump's beck and call from the beginning of this second term of his administration. They've been saying it, the loudest to say rescheduling, while we've been saying, hey, deschedule. They have very little interest in freeing people from jail, except maybe the True Leave lady. I mean, her husband, I believe, did get convicted of something. He may or may not be allegedly serving time. I don't know. She referred to herself as preferring to be called a drug lordess on the cover of Forbes article that she is now the feature of. That timing is not a coincidence. And so when you think about companies like True Leave and Cure Leaf and bigger, I think Canopy Grow and it's hard for Acreage.
Well, they always keep changing the names, and
That's
this
true
person
too.
buy this one, and this one drives that, or Farm Canna. Okay, could have just bankruptcy sunset and could be THC Farms next.
That is very true. There is a lot of musical chairs on things. Quiet as it kept. We've talked about the REIT that has a lot of these big companies not being, paying their bills. And they claim because the medical market has been shrinking and poorly performing in some of these areas, and they haven't been able to really take over adult use like they thought they were going to. So they got a little special treat for us. Here, included in this ruling, what we didn't never really expect was for the DEA to specifically call out medical marijuana programs, but it said FDA approved marijuana products and products made by state licensed medical marijuana program participants. So if you are in a state like Florida, where there's only medical marijuana as a program, and you are True Leave in Florida, then you were just told by the federal government that, at least in order, in bold letters, that you are effective immediately Schedule 3, your products. Now, of course, there's always a loophole in government, so I don't know how quickly they'll be able to capitalize on that. But by being Schedule 3, they do basically have a runway on now having access to federally, legally compliant products, which then mean they have banking access, financing access, unfeathered by any issue, 280E, unfeathered by any issue. Even in the order, it expressed opinion on 280E. Now, that has to be an IRS directed thing. Thank God for multiple agencies. But the Attorney General basically said, we think this should be retroactive back, because there's many people who have not paid their taxes, right? We've also reported on that. So what needs to be clipped here is that this is very much, if I'm playing chess, it's a setup for someone being able to be like, checkmate. Okay. But let's not forget the pharmaceutical companies get to play here as well. It isn't full checkmate for these big MSOs, because a $1 billion company in the cannabis space often cannot compete with a $50 billion pharmaceutical company or a $100 billion pharmaceutical company. But maybe their goal is to be bought by these companies. Either way, it creates it creates an event for earning money, wealth, generational wealth, money, in a matter of years, right? Very, very short years. So we don't even need a lot of time for this to be in place for them to move the dollars. And that's my concern, number one. And as far as adult use is concerned, if you have adult use or if you still rocking in legacy, there are some concerns because the DEA typically likes to enforce new rules. And so my worry is that there's going to be an energy of enforcement on the next couple of years to ensure that this new model that they've set up actually works. And the pharmaceutical companies and the big MSOs are absolutely going to be lobbying to the federal government to do that enforcement, because it puts them in a much, much more advantageous position. Clip that.
That is crazy. Okay, literally crazy, insane. We mad at Pinky Cole for filing bankruptcy, and they basically asking the IRS to forgive all their tax debt.
Yes, that's one part. And they're also getting more financing. So they were already able to get loans because, again, white males do control a lot of the financing. They're already able to get hundreds of millions of dollars of personal or private equity financing. Now, this will allow them even more carte blanche to being able to be funded. There are probably a few licenses that are owned in the medical space by smaller companies, I'm sure. But this is also where consolidation becomes the big game, because they don't also have any any laws against that either, as far as
No
acquisition.
monopoly laws, but that's crazy because a lot of things, especially here on the East Coast, we talked about it a lot. On the West Coast, not so much, but on the East Coast, a lot of people adult use and medical use at the same dang time. You know what I mean? Like a rap song. So it's like, okay, we just talked about how our medical programs are shrinking. They're doing stuff like allowing it to be in healthcare facilities to help booster patient intake. But now, what happens to the adult use market, and how are the DA and FDA now supposed to regulate it?
So no, that's not what I hope happens. I mean, let's be honest. There's any myriad of ways this could go, and so my thought is going to be largely surrounded around my vision and my mission in the industry. We've got to fight back. Upcoming, they mentioned a June 26th hearing about talking about the rest of the market. So basically, they're saying there's going to be a hearing to start the clock again on whether the rest of cannabis should be deemed medicinal, and this is where we have to come out fighting, because the truth of the matter is the medical cannabis program is selling the same products as the adult use cannabis program. Here in New York, in Florida, there's only a medical program, but Florida's market really is very much similar or analogous to the underground market. They did a decent job doing that. You have flour, you have all of the typical types of brands in that market that you would expect underground as well. And so it's just interesting to see that we are talking about one plant, and they literally have just sliced the industry into like 4 different parts simply based off of the way they're describing it in this order. Let's not even start with the fact that the Controlled Substances Act itself needs to be updated, because actually the Controlled Substances Act focuses on Delta 9 THC. It doesn't say marijuana broadly. It talks about a molecule. So it's interesting that we are not even sure when we look at this whether this can be legally enforced. They also use the backdoor method with this treaty, and I don't even want to get into it because I'm not a lawyer, but I've been on a lot of meetings in the last few days, and what it lets me know is that folks are going to likely sue. And so who knows if this will be able to play out the way it needs to be played out. I've never been on the same side as Smart Approaches to Marijuana, or SAM, but they've already retained a former attorney general in order for them to sue the federal government for trying to make the claim that cannabis has medicinal value. Now, here's the thing. Cannabis does have medicinal value inherently. And what worries me about their ability to make the claim as a country is because we're trying to stupidly say, well, if the label or the state says it's medical, then it's a medical use. If the label says it's adult use, then it's adult use. Cannabinoids don't work like that in our body scientifically. In fact, the only person that can dictate what is being used for is the person using it. Again, a human right. I'm letting you know whether I'm chillaxing on it or whether it's doing something else, but the way cannabinoids work is actually doing both and or more than I can even name at the same time, because that's how it works in the body. It's interesting to see this unscientific, wholly biased approach, but what is new with America?
Nothing. And they're seeing a lot of different people cash in on it, and they said, no, this ain't your money grab. So this now also, as you explain how it's consumer choice on how to use it, what happens to the consumer? Will medical markets like Alabama, Georgia, all these places, Utah, have like a remix, like more THC or less THC? Like, are we going to see a wave of southern states now have higher dosing?
That remains to be seen, because one thing the order didn't call out was say, oh yeah, we're going to tell every state how to run their medical program, right? All it said was that it had to be a state licensed medical program. And so that means Oklahoma, and Oklahoma is the wild, wild west, right? In terms of what can be offered, and a hot mess there sometimes when you talk about it, but also in a good way too. It's like there's goods and there's bads in an open market of that type, but it is medical, and all use is medical there. Or it could be the way that Louisiana or like you said, Texas, like Georgia, these low dose medical programs are legitimate in the sense of their schedule. It will mean that the Georgia market, they wanted it to run through pharmacies, and the DEA sent a cease and desist on them being able to sell the low dose THC, because technically a pharmacy couldn't do that without it being a special license, right? And they didn't have that. Now they don't have to worry about that. So it actually means that the system as they built it is going to work better potentially. They don't have to change anything. Okay. And if anything, the people who are adult use may be looking to figure out ways of now claiming something that we've always known to be true. We shouldn't even have never had two different programs to begin with. It shouldn't be scheduled, period. There should be, though, some concept of over the counter like Advil, right? Branded ibuprofen, or pharmaceutically driven and led and issued ibuprofen of a higher dose. That's always been the model that I felt we should follow. But we also decided through most of the country that the legalization effort was going to go through the regulate like alcohol model. And herein lies the problem. We never, ever really did the convincing that we needed to do in 1996 when California legalized around the medicinal value and benefits of cannabis. And unfortunately, it's coming back to bite us in the ass. But luckily, we do have organizations that have existed for 5-10 years, and pharmacists, and we do have a lot more research than we did in 1996. So mofos come in with, as many receipts as possible come June to talk about the fact that this is all medicinal. What you mean?
That's true. So what is the takeaway for like current adult use business operators with this scheduling?
Well, I want to clip that last thing. I would say in this thing, far as the operators are concerned, you need to play by the rules of your state. Make sure your licensing and all of that, it remains up to date, because the first low-hanging fruit for any enforcement is going to be people who are non-compliant with their state, whether they're medical or adult use. Okay. At the end of the day, DEA has always shown their hand when it comes to enforcement. They have an eradication and suppression department for marijuana specifically in the agency. And so thinking back to 1996 to 2011, prepare for the worst, which could be that, the DEA could then decide, okay, this new rule is in place, we're going to start doing enforcement. And enforcement of the rules means that everybody in an adult use license program operating is operating against the law. And the federal government can pursue the prosecution and indictment, technically. And when they didn't have any guardrails around it, they did it. And mostly, again, it was racially biased in its enforcement. Big surprise there. And immigration rules also applied here as well. And so that means working in the industry, right? This was already a potential issue, but now it becomes even heightened because they're watching. If you're a consumer, you should be promoting the descheduling, because that means you will actually get to use cannabis however you want to use it. If you're 21 and over and you want to use cannabis for spiritual use, for medicinal use, nutritional use, for adult use, recreational use, social use, whatever it may be, people are finding cannabis helps for focus as well, weight loss. Like, the more science we know, the more we unlock, the better it is for consumers. And they're still trying to lock up the plant. You don't want to get your weed in a pill. You don't want it to be 2035 and you're getting your weed in a pill. Okay. And that'd be the only way that you could get a cannabinoid in your body. That's a terrible existence, in fact, and not what we fought for. And so consumers will feel it also if you have a state that didn't have no program. You know how online they're like, no, nothing. Sorry, I had to do it. But like, yeah, it's nothing. That means they still going to, in South Carolina, be looking to arrest. In fact, all this does is now give them more license to do so, because the federal government said it doubled down and said, that is even more. So we said not legal, right? So I think we have to be cautious. And we also at the same time have to be, activists. And we have to fight for what is necessary at this point.
All right. Well, that is our show. Thank y'all so much for joining us, listening in. This is the deep dive on rescheduling and what's happened this past week. So funny, coming off 420, and they rescheduled it from schedule 1 to schedule 2. We see what y'all are doing, but make sure you guys are liking and subscribing to our YouTube channel at the We Head and Company. Make sure you are leaving us comments. We read the comments. Okay, we read it on YouTube and we read it on Instagram at she_blaze. And if you are listening or on the playback, as far as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcast, give us 5 stars, okay? Because we some 5-star chicks.
Yes.
Now, and it is so good to talk about it. We had to go live about this, so I'm glad we could give the information to the people. And let's go out and enjoy our Saturday.
Yes, it's a rainy Saturday, but time to have some rest and relaxation before we get to work next week. I want to just quickly say, if you're in New York, we're hosting our We Did Our Part Lobby Day on April 28th. That is a Tuesday. You can meet us in Albany at 10 a.m. on the $1 Million Staircase, where we're hosting a press conference before starting off a day of activism. And now it's time to get active. It's time to make sure that the state of New York knows that we did our part helping them create this $3 billion industry, and now it's time for them to deliver their part. And so you can join us in Albany again on Tuesday, April 28th. You can follow me at the Weedhead Co. on Instagram. Ice, thank you always for giving the information and asking the questions from the people. I appreciate that. This has been a very busy week, but it's always worth it. We are still moving the needle forward, even when we have obstacles ahead of us, like this federal rescheduling conversation.
I know that's right. Well, I will check you in person, sis. Thank y'all. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.